Hello, everyone. Welcome to our peer-to-peer session, How to Select and Work with Website Building Platforms. This session forms part of the peer-to-peer series with New Bedford Creative. My name is Marianella Perry. I am the Senior ARPA Fellow at New Bedford Creative. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now I would like to introduce our guest speaker, artist and design professional Helen Granger, who will share strategies with us for selecting the right platform for you.
Thank you, Marianella. Yeah, I'm an artist who learned how to build websites, in part to earn myself a living. So a lot of what you're going to learn from me is School of Hard Knocks. This is not, I never went to school for this kind of thing. So I'm going to give you some quick rundowns of some things. It's going to be a large overview at first, and then we'll get into specifics. So let me share my screen. This is how to select and work with website building platforms. So what are we covering today? I'm going to go over some real basics. What is a website? How do I get a website? What are my options for building a website? How do I select an option for building a website? What do these options look like? And then this should just say styles and templates, but some other things we'll be going over as well as resources. And we're going to look at real-time stuff on the internet as well. So here's your basics. What is a website? Well, we're going to start with the real basic. What is a URL? That is what you see at the top of your browser, what you type in to find somebody's website, or any link pretty much on the internet is a URL. It just means Universal Resource Locator. You don't need to remember that. That's just what it means. But when it's your website, you want to know this is your domain name as well. So this can be confusing. A URL can be any link, but your domain is your URL. It's your address. So that's the basics there. We're going to go over this more, so don't worry. To have your own website, you need a domain, and your domain must have a space on a server connected to the internet. Your domain is the home for your website, and your domain URL is your address. So we're going to show that in pictures now. So here we have the internet, just that big cloudy thing out there. A server, and when you back here, we said your domain must have space on a server. A server is a special kind of computer that serves data to the internet so that your computer can go and find it. You must register a domain with internet authorities, the internet. Your domain will live on a server. It might be your own, might be one you rent or lease. We'll get into that. And then people find your website through your URL. Or your domain through your URL. So how do I get a website? Or how do you get a website? Here are the basic steps. Lots of different ways to do this. So this is just, here are the basic steps. You have to come up with a domain name for that site, right? Then once you have one, you have to find out if anyone else has already registered that domain. This can be done at whois.com, and I will show you that. If that domain is available, in other words, no one else has got it, you have to purchase and register it. You are buying the right to use that domain name URL as your website address. This can be done at Whois and lots of other ways, so we'll go through that in a minute. Once you've got that domain, you have to point it somewhere. And that is, you point it to this server, and you do that using your hosting plan. What are my options then? Now I know I've got to know how to do all this stuff. Well, that's the basics. Somebody else can do it for you. There are so many ways to get to a website. So you can do it yourself, completely write it in your own code, all that sort of thing. You can use something that's a platform to help you build, from a structure like Bootstrap, which is code, to Dreamweaver, which is a program. You can use blogs and blog platforms, and we're going to cover all this. Portal services like Squarespace and Wix, and then a CMS. So let's look at what some of these are, and then we can talk about why you want different ones. So first of all, this is who is. So I can put a name in here. Let's say I want to start a business about barbecue. I can see if anyone else has ever come up with it. Oh, that one's not available. Okay, I'm strictly beef. Is that available? Look, there it is. So I can purchase this and its variations, which is something you'll need to learn about, right here. Then I have it. Then I can go to any host or any number of other options after that. So if we go back to our list, do it yourself means you have to know all of this. You have to know about the servers, the URLs, the hosting, all that. You have to understand how to build it. That's a lot for most people. If that's scary, one of the things you should look at when it comes to these services are things that do more for you. So, for instance, if you wanted to do a blog, you wouldn't have your own domain, but you could have a quick website. It just wouldn't be yours. But you could do that today, fast and easy. If you know what a blog is, it's a particular kind of website, but it isn't yours any more than your Facebook page is really yours. It can go away anytime. You can also build with various platforms. So the one I want to show you now are the Squarespace and Wix models, because when you use something like this, it does everything for you. You can buy your domain here. You can set up your website here. You can do your email marketing. You can do so many things. So if you've got a lot to cover, that's one reason you might look at that. So when I talk about portal services, that's Squarespace, Wix, things that do pretty much do it all for you. And then the more difficult but highest end thing to do in the long run is to have your own WordPress website, which is more than a blog. It is literally your own website that you would build using the WordPress platform. And the reason to do that, these little acronyms: Content Management System, Customer Relationships Management, CMS, and CMR. All that really means is that you have a database behind your website. So if you have a lot of content, if you've got many, many galleries of work, if you're selling something and you need to keep inventory, these are the reasons why you might need a database-driven site. Now, you can do that with Squarespace and Wix as well. Again, we'll get into the differences, but the high end of doing all of this is this level of work. And that's usually for a really big store site or a bigger company than most of you are probably dealing with right now. So those are our options. How do I select one? We're going to have a few different criteria. There are your own abilities, interest, and time, the most important one. And then the type of site and the site needs, and the explicit costs and hidden costs in having a website, which are big, and what you can get out of styles and templates from what you can find. So the biggest one, based on your abilities, interest, and time. We talked about the base level is you're going to write your own code, and this is what it looks like. This is a web page in code. That's do it yourself, and you can do that. That's a lot of learning. So is that of interest to you? Do you have that ability? And do you have that kind of time? You need to be realistic because, well, for two things, you do not need to learn code to do a website, although it helps a little, but also in your realism, consider that as Construction Cat tells us, time is money. Your time is worth something. And if it takes you a lot of time to build a website, which it does, you have to know how much of your time is worth spending on it. So another one is on the option to consider is the type of site that you're building and that you need. And here we have lots of options. You could be an artist portfolio showcase. You could be selling services and things. You could be creating events or wanting to give people an opportunity to see what your events are. You might need it as, and almost everyone needs it as a hub to their online presence elsewhere, whether they have an eBay shop, an Amazon shop, they're on social media, they have a Bandcamp site, so many ways that you might be on the internet. Your website gives you that base, but you want a platform that makes it easy for you to make those connections. You might be selling memberships to something. You might be using email marketing and newsletters. A lot of platforms can actually have this stuff on board for you, so you're not figuring it all out for yourself. And then lastly, you may very well want to have your own email attached to your domain. So if you've created beefbarbecue.com and you want to be benny@beefbarbecue.com for your email, you'll want to make sure your platform makes that available to you, or makes it easy for you to do, or that you understand how to do it. So those are your basic options. So the last one, based on explicit costs and hidden costs, is probably the hardest and where you have to do your research. So one of the things you're going to be looking at in terms of a cost is how much storage space you have. 2 gigabytes may sound like a lot, but that's pretty much what you have on your phone. So it's not that much storage space once you start getting a lot of images or a lot of inventory. So this table that you're seeing on the slide is taken directly from, I believe it was Wix's display of their various levels that you can join at. And you can see that there are a number of things here that you're going to look at besides storage and bandwidth. And those are your add-ons. For instance, on some of these levels, you only get to have 5 collaborators or 2 collaborators. What does that mean? Only 2 people can log into your website. Only 2 people have that ability. Maybe you only need 1, so that's not a big deal to you. Maybe you have a team, and that would be a problem. So these are the things you're looking for in terms of the stuff you might not have thought was part of what these differences in price mean. And every one of these platforms has a different one of these. You really just have to go and look. And one of the things we don't think about necessarily when we're getting involved in something is how easy it is to get out. So this is one reason to buy your domain through Whois, so it's always yours. You haven't bought it through anybody else and you won't lose it. But then you can take it almost anywhere. So this is another thing that you want to look at when you're comparing services is, oh my gosh, I started at Squarespace at this level and now I want to move to another level or out of this to another platform entirely. It's not necessarily easy to do, but you may feel that you were fine in the first place you started if you made good choices. The other thing that you want to look at, and you will find this more once you get into it and you are using the platforms that give you templates, and we'll talk about that, is what in your particular platform you're looking at, what are its options for things like styles, templates, and fonts. So styles are colors, graphic design, font use, everything you see on the page. So these are all your styles, right? So these are the styles for this class, which is a navigation, and this is a headline font, and these are smaller fonts, and these are the base colors used, right? So when I'm looking at the templates for a site, and all of this creates a template, I'm looking for ones that fit what I want. And I brought up fonts separately and in a couple places because fonts are getting trickier to deal with on hosting platforms like Squarespace, Wix, and WordPress. So when you're using those kinds of sites, you want to look for a template that has a font that you like because changing it won't be easy. So you may want to base everything on the font because everything else will be easier to change. Things like that. And we can get into specifics as well. Now, before we go to the resources, we're going to go back and look at some of these platforms I'm talking about. WordPress has 2 versions. There is WordPress.com, which is where you would build a blog, believe it or not. And then there is WordPress.org, which is the engine on which you can build an entire website. You will almost never go to WordPress.org except to look at themes and learn things, because your actual WordPress installation, a lot of words here, would be handled on your host. So you're never going to get WordPress through something else. It's its own thing, unless you're looking at the blog. They look very similar and it can be very confusing. But the important thing to remember is WordPress.org is free. Putting a blog on WordPress.com, you can see their plans and pricings. That's a whole other level of stuff. When we are looking at Dreamweaver, which some folks will talk about, although I don't know if we have any Dreamweaver users on here today, but that is an Adobe product like Photoshop, where you literally go in and say, I want to create a particular kind of website. Again, you can see here where you need to know a few things in order to start this, or you're going to work from a template. And we'll talk more again about templates. So that's a thing that you're going to hear over and over again, are templates. And we're going to go back to this. Think about all those things, and there are more, of course, that you consider when you're picking a platform. You're doing the same thing when you're picking a template. What do I need for my site? What kind of elements will I need to have in there? Does that template have a place for them? And as I've said before, it's a good idea to like the font because it's the hardest thing to change, and to dislike the colors because they are the easiest thing to change. And WordPress also has themes, and it's the same sort of thing. But WordPress really is a learning curve. It's a much higher up sort of thing. You're going to need to learn about it before you get involved with it. So if you're starting out at a different point, these are not bad options as long as you have the money. And if you want to learn, and I think if you're going to work with WordPress, if that's an option you're interested in, you are going to want to learn to code yourself. And I have in the resources ways to do that. Very quickly, I'm going to look at a hosting platform. So say I have done my due diligence and I have my domain, whether I've purchased it or not, I know it's available. At a hosting platform, which you're going to need if you're doing anything except Squarespace or Wix, at a hosting platform, you're going to need to set up an account, and you're going to need to choose a hosting level. Again, you need to look at all the options and what you get for what. And then you can look here and you may very well see that they will have here's how you get started, that sort of thing. They'll give you lots of options. And then if you know you want a WordPress site, they'll know just how to set it up for you, things like that. So if you have your domain, you can just go ahead and do this, pick a plan and go for it. But you can also, usually most hosting platforms, and here's a different one, will give you the opportunity to purchase your domain and set up your hosting all in one shebang. Doesn't have to be done that way, but usually they can. So you will always want to do this, even if you're doing this, which is Squarespace or Wix. Although they will be happy to do all that for you, in this case, you want to have that in case you ever want to move. Resources, just going to point out that Aquant Gymnasium is a great place to learn the basics of how to build a website by hand. And these other ones will give you also good ways to learn. The Web Style Guide will give you information about what are better practices on the web. These are the platforms I've talked about to a degree: WordPress, Squarespace, and Wix. The other things you can find. I forgot to put who is on there, but it's pretty clear. And then if you want to learn more about things like accessibility and colorblindness, these are from a past talk, I've just included them.
Thank you, Helen. I did not see any questions pop up in the chat. Oh, I see one. What is the name of the hosting website you were showcasing, and are there any more that you'd recommend from Paige?
Yeah, I can put those in the resources as well. Let me go ahead and just share the screen again so you can see them. This hosting company, A2 Hosting, is local, and I can recommend them. Another one that I showed you was SiteGround, and it's a great way to compare because it is a very popular one, but it's also pretty expensive when you really look at the small print. So those are the two I'm showing you, siteground.com and A2 hosting. Do I want to put who is in the chat too, so people have that information?
Whois.com, right?
Yeah, I can, it's in the, I can pull it up.
It's a good resource. I would have never thought to use that. And then I would have ended up in a situation where I'm like, I got the perfect website name. And it doesn't, it's already taken. So yeah, it's like, man, should have just stuck to firstname.com.
Well, even that can get harder.
With a Hendrik Hernandez, not so often, but yeah, I can only imagine.
That one's easier.
Yeah, I have a Wix site and I personally use Wix. I haven't bought the domain name out, so I still have the Wix name on it, even though recently I went through Google to buy hendrikhernandez.com and I own it. So I got to make the transition from the Wix site because I'm from the new school where it's always like, I got a Facebook and an Instagram, go find me there. My info's there. But anytime I look up another organization and they only have a Facebook, I tend to go, wow, that's pretty weak. That's weak.
And so here's the other thing. If we can talk, it's one thing I left out is like, why do I still need a website in the days of social media? Well, because, and the simple answer is, billionaire can come along and buy it and change the whole thing out from under you. There are people who have made their living on Twitter who are now faced with losing their living, literally. So you own your domain, you own your website. No one can take that away from you. Well, sure, a billionaire can come along and offer you lots of money, but he probably won't. So that is a really good reason to still have a website. It's the one place that doesn't change, and everything else can change around it. And again, if you have inventory, or if you have art, or if you have anything that you need to store lots of images, that sort of thing, it also helps, you know. Oh, my computer crashed. I lost my hard drive, but I have my whole portfolio up on my website.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't think about it like that either. I never thought about it like that because the hard drive crashing, the computer crashing, let's be honest, is an inevitability. It's going to happen at some point.
Exactly. And none of us are perfect about backing stuff up. But that acts as, in a way, as a storage for you. And then, of course, you know, your website can lead people to your social media because maybe they found you on Instagram, but they didn't think to go look. Whatever's next.
It's always changing so much faster on social media. And I know that as a musician, I've always been told, if this goes away tomorrow, how are you reaching people?
Exactly.
So it just turns into, if you're leaning on the social media platforms, they can get yanked out from under you so much quick. I mean, Facebook crashes consistently. And so for a while there, Instagram was giving people problems on mobile. And I remember being like like starting to come back into my musicianship, being social, and then losing Instagram for a day and being like, oh my God, how do I get to people?
Right.
So it's a good reminder to keep your website just as funky as your socials.
Yes, well, and that's the other thing. You control your website and how it looks.
Yes.
Somebody else can decide how to feed your content. I mean, for a while there on Twitter, where you could only see this much of an image, or on Facebook, you know, it changes all the time. And they can decide to change it to another thing. Okay, all your pictures are going to show as stars until we tell you, you know, it's like, oh. So your website, you control the look. It will always be your look. And that can be very useful as well, because, and this isn't marketing, but since we don't have a lot of questions about the basics that I showed, you know, when it comes to marketing, that's why people talk about branding, because what it is something that makes it demonstrably you. Oh, this is me, right? A lot of us have tattoos now for that reason. It's me, you can tell. I've got that tattoo. But that's a brand. Somebody knows it's you, you know, and that is something, again, you can control on your website in a way that you cannot control anywhere else. So it's useful for that reason. And then, and I don't have anyone going, oh, I have like, I'm selling t-shirts, what's my best option, or any questions like that. If you guys have those kind of questions, feel free to throw those around. My feeling is you really have to look at like how much time you have to devote. So you found Wix fairly easy to use.
Yes, it's very user-friendly, and it allows me to style it in a way where it pops to me. You know, the colors look good, the photographs, I'm lucky enough to have high resolution photographs and they upload very well and they upload large. And I have like maybe 30 instrumentals that I've made on there available to be listened to. So that's another thing was, as a musician, if Spotify goes away, if anything else goes away, I have my albums there, right? I can direct people directly there and they can technically buy it there.
With so many options, not everybody's got Spotify, not everybody's got the same. So,
oh yeah, it's,
you know, music
right.
formats change too. So yeah, that's another thing. And that's why if you're not into, in a lot of ways, I'm encouraging people, and I a year ago would have not encouraged people to go to Squarespace and Wix, and now I am, because things change very quickly now in terms of how sites are built, what best practices are, what size images should be. I mean, who knows what kind of device they're going to come out with next week. If it projects a zillion pixels on the wall, are your pictures still going to look good? Platforms like Wix and Squarespace help you keep those things in line. They're going to know, now they're not necessarily going to send you a message, your pictures are too small now, but their templates will update to whatever the newest standards are. And Squarespace, I don't know if Wix is like this, but Squarespace has pretty much actually stopped using templates in that sense. They have one basic underneath and you just change things to look the way you want to, which will keep it very stable, which is good because it means we'll always work no matter what happens underneath. And that is the other thing about what changes and why, if you're just trying to figure out how to get your own stuff out there, using one of those platforms is better because it will help you keep track of things you can't keep track of if you're too busy with the rest of your life. So you have to be a real, I want to do it myself and I want to understand it and learn it, I think, these days, to go do it yourself. And I do think fairly soon we're going to have AI helping us a lot with things like building websites. So there's going to be less and less need for like hands-on doing it, but more and more need to understand how you want it to look, what's important to see on it, which is why I did the last one as well.
Do those sites provide alt text images?
You always need to add your own alt text. Now, we kind of got into this last week and not everyone knew. So if there's anyone who doesn't know what alt text is, please put up your hand either with your emoji or some other way and let us know. But in all cases, even the most automatic site, the most it's going to do is suggest an alt text, and that will be AI suggesting the alt text. It is better if you specify the alt text. Okay, we have one person who doesn't know necessarily what alt text is. Okay, so for folks who can't see or have vision issues, they use something called a screen reader. And what that does is it reads the website to them. So when you have an image and it's going to just say picture, unless you put in an alt tag or alt text that says, this is a picture of a young man holding a phone while talking on a phone or something like that. What an alt text needs to be is descriptive so that when it is read out by a screen reader, it makes sense. Here is code written out. And here specifically is an alt tag. So the area I am highlighting is the code that says, I want an image. I want it to be this image. And this alt says, this is what the screen reader should read because it can't see this image. Cartoon with parent cussing and the official yelling, you're out of here. It was specific to this. So that alt text describes this image to a screen reader or to someone who is blind or has low vision, and they can know, oh, there was a cartoon here. It becomes particularly important when you have text on your images. So whenever you have text on an image, you particularly want to make sure there's alt text there in case that was important text, like starting at $11.99 a month or something like that. That is alt. Now you will see if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that when you post an image, you should be prompted, or you should be able to find the area where you can put in alt text. And that's a great way to practice, because you should always be using alt text. For anyone who has low vision, it is appreciated. And some of us use it now just to understand what somebody's posted. Don't look at the alt text because I don't get it. So the important thing about alt text is keep it short, descriptive. You do not need to say a picture of. You do not need to say this is an image. You literally just want to describe what's in the image. Two people standing by a bush.
Paying for domain, does it mean it's automatically registered? From Helen.
It's a good question. It's where these words start to, like, what does that mean? You've purchased the domain. That is a form of registering it. But once you've done that, if you don't point it somewhere, it's not going to mean anything. So yes, essentially yes.
Another question from Roger. What type of free web hosting does exist?
I don't know of much that is free. There may be options out there. You can always start a blog on a blogging platform like blogger.com. I can throw that in. And that would be free.
My Wix site has been free.
And your Wix site has been free.
Yeah, you just have to have Wix in the name. Like it'll be like whatever,
Right.
it'll still have Wix in the name, but my Wix site has completely been free the entire 4 years of
Right. Yeah. So that's true. But a Wix site is not hosting. So a Wix site is a proprietary site on Wix, unless you buy your domain and use it, and then it becomes so. Free hosting can be hard to come by. You might find some out there. You might find some that's funded by arts organizations and things like that. That might be one way. But that can be tough to have a, free hosting. You can buy your own server and do it yourself, but that's a lot of work. Yes, you can. Yeah, when I say
at that point, wouldn't it be better to hire someone?
people do. Yeah,
Wow.
no, but that's real do it yourself. You can own the whole thing in that regard.
That's a lot of work. It sounds
Yeah.
like.
It is a lot of work.
For some reason, it sounds like a high electricity bill.
Oh yeah,
I
most
don't know why.
of the server farms are out in underground in Nebraska or someplace, Utah, weird places like that. Yeah, because these are rooms full of very big computers that have to be kept at a certain temperature all the time. And yeah.
If you are selling something, how do you set up something to protect your customers' purchases?
Okay. When you're dealing with e-commerce, again, this is where places like Wix and Squarespace can be so helpful, because they will have the ability to do e-commerce on the platform for you. And that means that they have, it can be called a plugin, whatever. It's essentially, it's an application that runs the store for you. So it processes the credit cards and, provides the security that people expect in a shopping experience. There are various levels to doing this. If you've never sold anything on the internet before, you might want to get an Etsy shop or something, although I don't know if those cost now either, but you might want to start more low key. But, as Henrik's saying, if Wix is free and you don't even want to buy domain yet, you could go and play with that stuff there. But yeah, my feeling is, especially when you're dealing with commerce and worse yet, inventory, that you want to get a commerce platform to start with. So you want to look at Squarespace, you want to look at Wix and get what they offer, see what they offer you for, what you can get out of them for that. And if that doesn't look good, look around, see what other people are doing. Ask your friends, right? What they're using. I'm going to look real quickly at something because I might be able to put it in your resources as well. So there is something called Shopify as well. And there are a number of these things. Believe me, there's so many, it's almost impossible to really help you here, but this is a platform specific to selling. So if you know what you want as an online store, it's a great place to start, at least to learn about what you might be getting into what you need to do in terms of paying upfront, how much you can do without that. So shop sites like Etsy, where they do all that for you, might be useful, but it won't be the same as having your own website and your own shop. That is going to be more work. And it depends on where you're at in your process, whether you're ready for it or not. And if you are, then I would look at, like I said, I would look at the Squarespace, Wix, and you can look at Shopify. They can also help you build a website. So it's worth looking at those. These are things I have off the top of my head. I do not have an expertise in e-commerce, and you should do your homework and look around, but this gives you some options to look at. Actually, I have a question for you, Henrik, about Wix. Does it tell you what size your images should be, or can you upload anything and it fixes the image for you?
I've uploaded various different pixel sizes and it kind of fixes it for me. I think that if you do get too big, they're like, stop, right? Like they're like, don't
That's
do that.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. And it translates really well from desktop to cell phone. I can say that on my mobile, it looks really good. And on my desktop, it looks really good as well. No matter how good your internet connection is, when it's on editor mode, it's extremely laggy. It's no matter where I've used it from, no matter what device I've used it from, don't ever try to edit it from your mobile device.
I can tell you why, but put a minute in that minute. What I was bringing up about images is another reason to use these platforms that help you is because then you can just get the best image you can, put it up there, and it'll deal with it. You don't have to become a Photoshop expert to figure out the best way to get your image on site. However, if you're selling product and you need to take pictures of a physical product, you do need to become a photographer because there's no way around it.
You need to learn some uplighting. You gotta learn some uplighting, and you need to learn a little bit of post editing and adding some saturation and color. So absolutely. Yes.
That is harder to have an automatic process do that. However, there are a lot more tools out there now than there used to be. Again, I don't even try to keep up with all of that. What I tell you to put a pin in? Oh, so again, your platform, if it's a good platform, it will seem fast. When you go to see your website, it'll be like this. The reason is because all browsers have cache. What that means is it holds in quick, like short-term memory, short storage, the stuff on your website. So it doesn't have to reload it every time. That's what takes time. So when you're in the editor, it's reloading everything. Very slow. But that is also a way to judge whether, your website platform is good or your host is good, because your website should cache images, should be fast once it's been built. More words to understand.
Helen?
Yeah.
I made a website on WordPress because our public library gave a demo and taught us how to use it. And so I do have one, but it's not live. I was just playing around with it, and I find it very hard to use.
Yes.
And, I wonder if the one that Henrik is using, the Wix one, would be better.
I think that if you're starting out, unless you want to learn more about building a website than you need to, you're better off with something like Wix or Squarespace. It really is a question of how much time and energy and interest you have. So if you look at WordPress and you're like, don't use it. Yeah, because you probably don't have your own domain at this point, do you? You're just building.
What I did was I bought my domain name, so I'm reserving it. But I just put that on the WordPress as well.
Okay. Yes, you can always point it to a different place. So that's when I talk about pointing, your domain now points to that space wherever that WordPress is. You can move it somewhere else. You can move it to Wix. You can move it to Squarespace. You can point it elsewhere. So. Yeah, I would say that's really the choice. And there are ways to go in and try any of these things. So that's a good idea to play with things. If you've tried WordPress and it's not doing it for you, now's the time. Find something else.
Only use it every 6 months, and then I forgot, how do I do this? Okay,
I can say that Wix, when you go to log back into editor mode, it's very laid out. Like, do you want to edit the header? Do you want to edit the next picture under it? Do you want to edit the words under it? And it shows you your website in a kind of like a block format. And when you hover over anything, it'll just say edit. So then you can just edit it either in live or in a very more like detailed breakdown on the left-hand side. But on the right-hand side, it'll show you kind of like what people see on your website, and you can just hover and then make edits through that. I can say that that's why I chose it, because it was so easy to move things around. One day I'd wake up and my color scheme was not something that I thought was appealing. So the next day I changed everything black and yellow, and I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Left it like that for a while. But I know that if I have to go back in there to add something, it's a matter of, do you want to add another block and then slide something in there? The wording is so much it's so simplified that I find it hard to get confused. The only problem that I have with Wix is that it's laggy when you're editing, and you have to do that on a desktop. Don't do it on your phone.
Yes.
Please don't.
Yes, that is one thing, that either Squarespace or Wix, you're going to have to edit on a laptop or a computer. WordPress you could actually do on your phone, but you have to know what you're doing anyway. So
yeah, you can do Wix on your phone. I don't recommend that you do that. Just bad.
And so it's free like WordPress if you keep the extension, right?
yes, exactly. If you can go ahead and get a free account, I think on either one, Wix or Squarespace, as long as you want to leave that in your URL until you're ready to, then they'll show you how. If you own your domain and you want to attach it to your Wix site, they'll show you how to do it. It'll be part of your, how-tos.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for your time this afternoon. This was a great session. I'd also like to thank Helen once again for all of her hard work and all her resources.